What's happening, guys? Happy Wednesday! And thank you for joining another special episode of Your Welcome. I only want to do a quick recap over the weekend. I didn't find it to be the most tantalizing event in the history of ever in terms of setting up storyline for great fights. Yeah, go ahead. I'm a storyline guy. You guys like storylines. What kind of drama did we get from it? Look, I contended before that fight, and I'm talking about RDA versus Leon Edwards, that there was only one thing on the line. We're not make-believing this is a number one contenders fight. We're not make-believing this is an intern championship fight or a super fight or a world title. None of which it was any of those things. It's just a really great contest between two studs. Okay, great. But there was one thing on the line, which was a microphone at the end of the night to address the audience, to market, to build yourself. That's the only thing that Leon's been missing. Would like to say something. And in no means do I mean this to be condescending towards RDA, who I would never condescend to. But it has historically appeared that he is a bit of a stepping stone, which is, for some reason, is a terrible word. RDA is not a stepping stone. RDA is a straight up badass. He's a main event fighter. He's a top contender at all time. He's a former world champion. What I mean by the term is, if you will go back and look at the guys who have gotten over on him, whether it was Khabib, whether it was Kamaru, whether it was Colby, if you look at the guys who got over on RDA, something really great happened for them right after that. That was a respect that was earned. That was a guy who, if you beat, people are going to look and go, whoa, better give you a second look. And he brings in the right attention. He brings in the right eyeballs. And something good always happened to those guys. So when you look at Leon needs something good to happen to him. Leon cannot possibly prove himself to any of you. Certainly you would agree with me that he can't prove himself anymore with the punches and the kicks and the wrestling and the submission holds and the conditioning and the ability to deal with pressure and any possible question that you have. Certainly he's answered it by now. But that doesn't mean he's going to get his opportunity. In fact, I can all but assure you he's not going to get his opportunity. In fact, I can assure you he's not going to get his opportunity. I'm talking about at a world title. He's great opportunities. Main card, co-main, going into feature and main event fight. He's moving up. But I can assure you he's not going to get his opportunity for the championship to the point that he would agree with me. Proof of that would be his call out. He did not call out a champion. He called out Masvidal. Now, nobody is currently as red hot in the sport of MMA as Jorge Masvidal. I have never seen in my life a fighter gain more pop for 5 seconds of work other than Jorge Masvidal. I would have to go back to 2009 to even make a comparison. It was the night Portland, Oregon, Nate Marquardt fought red hot Damian Maia. Nate shut him off, and I believe it was 8 seconds. If I'm wrong, it was in 9 seconds. They come across the ring, boom, Nate threw one punch and went home. And oh boy, did it ever propel him, as it rightfully should. But George is in that spot. George is in a very interesting spot right now. We've seen many guys in it before, but not guys that are this red hot. Look, Jorge Masvidal's next fight, I don't know, guys, if he's fighting for a championship or not. He's in the discussion. I can assure you he is a main event. I assure you he is a main event. In many ways, he was a main event in his last fight. I will just remind you, that night against Askren, I was there live. The whole pop around the town, the whole pop around the media, the whole pop around open workouts and everything that led into it. It wasn't about anybody other than the fight between Askren and Masvidal. So this guy's a main eventer. But it is one of those interesting questions of, but who's he going to fight? If he's going to fight for a title, as many people say he should, myself included, there's still some work that's got to be done there. Look, Colby, a world champion, is about to fight Robbie, a former world champion. We have to see that fight. If there's anything we know about MMA, it goes very fast. If there's anything we know about the Jorge Masvidal rise, meteoric is the word I'm looking for, rise to popularity, it's that things can happen really fast. So the same respect that George and Ben were paid, that has to be paid to two former title holders, and it will be. Then you got Kamaru out there waiting in the wings. Kamaru certainly has an opinion in this whole thing, up, down, or sideways. No matter how valuable, how much piece of the pie Kamaru's opinion, he gets an opinion, he gets a say. He's got a history with Colby. We got to let that fight go. Let him share his opinion. Let the fight. There's just a lot of moving parts. And we have to acknowledge how fast it goes and the recency bias that we all share. So, either way, Kamaru's not scheduled to fight until later this year. Does George want to sit that long? Can George sit that long? And we talk about recency bias, as hot as he is right now, could that cool off with somebody else's great performance? We don't have another welterweight that I think George needs to sweat and worry about cutting the line, aside from what I'm considering as a semifinal. I feel like George and Ben versus Colby and Robbie were your final four for a number one contendership. I think that we can all at least agree to that. So that fight has to play, and then becomes a question, who do you go with? Does George want to sit that long? And if not, who's he going to fight? Interesting conversation. And there's not a lot of people that check the boxes. He's got the history with Leon Edwards. That's a great fight. That works all day long, no question about it, but not just a matter of just sign off and go do it. That's just not how the business works. You have to ask yourself, if you're the promoter, can the steam gained by Leon getting over on Masvidal, will he gain enough momentum to counter the red-hot demand for George Masvidal that would be cooled off should George lose? You have to ask yourself this. You will hear the term a lot. He has to earn it. When a champion says it, it's code talk for I'm scared of that guy and I don't want to fight him, right? You will hear champions often say, well, he hasn't earned it. He hasn't earned it. Champion has no seat at the table as far as ducking and dodging anybody. Why would you not want to fight a guy that hasn't earned it? If a guy hasn't earned it, that probably means he's not very good. Go fight him. That's the guy you want to fight. You want to fight the easiest guy in the largest arena for the biggest paycheck with the least amount of skills. That's who you want to fight. So when you hear champions say it, it's always nauseating because they think they're smarter than the audience and everybody sees right through it. It's schoolyard antics. But when other people say it, such as a promoter, he has to earn it, he doesn't just mean by showing his skills. There's another side to this where he must also win over the imaginations and the demand and the creativity of the audience. I think that Leon has done himself a tremendous service in that, particularly with a win over RDA, particularly being on ESPN in front of more eyes than he's ever been in front of, and particularly the way he did the call out of Masvidal. He didn't get crazy with it. He didn't go say something silly. Oh, I'll fight anybody. Give me Daniel Cormier. What would the point of calling out Daniel Cormier be? I've heard guys do it. What would the point of that possibly be? They're not going to make that fight. And whatever messaging you think you're giving about I'm such a tough guy, I'll go take. You just wasted your time and everybody else's. It was a very good call out of Masvidal. They do have the history. Ariel Hawaiian and I get in an argument about this all the time. Ariel thinks that because Masvidal went up and gave him the 3-piece and a soda, that Leon should absolutely be given that fight and an opportunity to answer for that. I don't disagree with Ariel. I just disagreed with Ariel that they would make that fight right away. The reason was, this was a bad action that happened to be caught on camera, okay? Masvidal and Leon got into, these are two trained fighters that are fighting in a non-sanctioned event. That's very compelling theater. For sure, I get it. They clear the dugout and the pitcher and the catcher start going at it. I understand. It's good TV. That's still a bad action. That cannot be celebrated and that cannot be rewarded, at least immediately. And I will happily tell you why, in case you guys haven't connected the dots, because then that's just instantly where the sport goes. This sport is full of copycats. I don't know if we've had a guy with an autonomous thought in 15 years. I'm not fully blaming him. I don't really mind that. Why reinvent the wheel? If you see something working for another guy, go steal his gimmick and copy it. I get the whole thing. What I'm sharing with you is if they were given a fight And if that was propelled to the top of the card and it came with all of the marquee and all of the fanfare and all of the money and everything that came with it, anybody who wanted to fight with anybody else is just going to go grab a camera and go sucker punch a guy. You just can't do that. You have to stop that in its track. It would have been a great night for business. Absolutely. It would have been great from a competitive standpoint. Absolutely. Would have helped solve the rankings. I get it. You can't reward a bad act, at least not right away. You can't reward a bad act ever. That doesn't mean those two don't ever fight. That's not what I'm contending. And it doesn't even mean that you wouldn't use that footage as part of the storytelling and the promotion for the fight. It doesn't mean any of those things. But you do want to make sure that you don't send a message to the knuckleheads you've got in the back that are monkey see, monkey do, and just looking to copy the next guy in front of them, that if you want to get a match with somebody, to bring a camera along and go punch a guy. That's what I've always contended. But I think that Leon is on very good standing, and I thought that his call-out was very appropriate. I also think unless Masvidal gets a title fight, of which he just might be exactly what he's going to do, I think it makes sense. I think Leon's got dates in his favor. I think that's one knock against Masvidal. How long does he want to be out? We do, of course, have to see the Colby-Robbie. You're then going to have all sorts of fun in the media that nobody should squash instantly. Once Robbie and Colby fight, unless it's... If that's a snooze fest and absolutely nobody wins and the crowd is booing, okay, great, go ahead and name George. But if that's a good fight, no matter which way you're going to go, you should let that marinate for a little bit. Let the Ariels and the Chaels of the world come out and debate that. Let Brendan Schaub do a piece and Joe Rogan. Let that go. Because these guys are teammates. These guys are the best of friends. These guys were roommates. I do not believe they're still roommates, but these guys are great friends. So now, all of a sudden, and they've made it very clear, very, very clear to anybody that will listen, and they'll say it right in front of each other. Neither one stabbed the other one in the back. I am here to be champion. The end. Whoever I got to go through and whatever I got to do and whoever I got to, whether I'm arguing against him or I'm fighting against him, I'm here to be champion. And that is a very compelling storyline. Colby Covington recently said, just to put in perspective for you guys, Colby Covington recently said that Robbie Lawler left the American Top Team because of a poster that was up. And I can't remember if Colby said this or if I dug into it and found it on my own, but Tyron Woodley fought Robbie Lawler for Robbie's World Championship. Tyron beat him. Tyron was also an American Top Team member. So when Tyron won, and he's got this celebration, this great moment, it was captured on film, and they blew it up into a big poster, and they hung it up at the American Top Team. As you would do when one of your guys wins a world championship. As you would do. The other side of it was he beat another one of your guys. He beat Robbie. So Robbie saw the poster and said, I'm out of here. Great. You guys don't have to weigh your opinion on that at all. I'm actually using that to prove a further point, which is teammate versus teammate. And I don't think those two are going to have to fight. I actually don't like the feel of that myself. I don't think there's going to be a demand to see them fight, but they are going to have it out on camera. They are going to have it out in the media, on the microphone. Text messaging Dana behind the other one's back. I just got the best of him today. He skipped practice today. Whatever it could be. I think you got to let that marinate for a little bit. I think you got to let us all have some fun and then reveal where the shoe is going to drop. I think that's probably going to be Promotion 101, but once again, that takes some time. And that pushes that date a little bit further out for George. Most guys, like anything in life, when you're red hot, you can only cool down. What goes up must come down. That's most guys' career, but you will see some guys who are some exceptions to that, and for reasons that are unknown, for reasons that you could not even identify. It appears that Masvidal's not going to cool down. He got all of this run. He had this surprise moment. He took out Askren, cuts the interview afterwards, and now I'm seeing more pictures of him and more interviews, and he's more in demand. He appears to be gaining, Steve. That's good for him. That's good for his argument. Anytime I'm talking about the date and the date being further out, what I'm really trying to say is a guy could cool off by then. All of a sudden, he's got to find something else to do. Other opportunities come up. Other competition comes. He just got called out on ESPN. Against the guy that he had a beef with in the back. All of these things have to be settled at some point. the other thing, I mean, how much do you want to talk about? Let's say Masvidal gets the nod. Let's say Masvidal goes into the fight. Let's say he wins. He's going to need an opponent. Maybe that's where Leon sits. Let's say Masvidal loses. He's going to need an opponent. Leon's not ready for a title fight. He goes through Masvidal. Then he's ready for a title fight. I mean, there's so many moving parts, but there's so many discussions that have to be had, and I think you can get pulled in all sorts of different directions. I think for the time being, it's important to understand is that Masvidal, that Leon really did it right. He went out there, he performed, he answered the question of can he do championship rounds, he answered the question of can he beat world champions. Yeah, absolutely. Can he deal with the pressure? And then he did a call out that was right. He didn't waste his time. He went after a guy who makes sense, makes absolute sense to fight. And don't forget, it's not a bad spot for Leon either way. I digress there to Masvidal. This is a good spot for Leon. Leon has a fight with Masvidal. That's going to happen. Bet your ass that's going to happen. And whether that's next or that's a year from now, they're fighting each other for sure. So it makes a lot of sense for Leon to saddle his horse to the idea that Masvidal could win the strap, which brings him right into a world title fight. It just makes sense for a lot of reasons. I don't think Leon thought this through as far as I'm carrying it out for you guys. But as far as watching a young man perform and handle his business and do everything right, he did a really good job. The second one fight ends, the marketing for the next fight begins. I had a fight. I fought a guy named Paulo Filho, and we were fighting for the WEC World Championship. And I'm beating it. Everything's going great for old Chael. And Paulo armbars me, and I submit. He taps me out. And we jump in the ring afterwards. And it was kind of a surprise because I was mauling him. It was going very, very good. At one point, the referee almost stopped it and gave it to me. And I'm just saying, I trying to paint the picture for you. It was going very good for me. And all of a sudden, I'm done. It's over. And he wins. So when the promoter gets in the ring, the promoter comes into the ring first. And he comes right up to me and says, the camera does not have the tap. Say you didn't tap. We're doing a rematch. Comes right up to me and tells me this. Boom. They put a camera on me. Said I did not tap. I followed the script. The marketing for the next fight had begun. Everything's cool in the gang. We set up a rematch. I had the executive commissioner of that state want to have an infraction against my license for making his referee look bad and denying a tap. And it was beyond mind-boggling that he would bring that up. Beyond mind-boggling, where a commission who exists on a 6% gross revenue of the fights, and here we are building a fight for whatever reason, factually correct, who cares, would possibly then bring something like that up. And you must understand the marketing for one fight begins the moment the other fight ends. Leon really did a good job with that. So I made the mistake once again of tuning into a Monday Night Raw. And, you know, I don't watch very much wrestling unless they come to town and I can go live. I enjoy it when it's live, and it's about every 2 years in Portland. You get a little bit of a kick out of it. But, I mean, what a piece of crap. I watch that every now and then just to remind myself what garbage it is. And I don't really have any idea why they can't seem to figure it out over there. It's as simple as they don't know how to write stories. They start guys and then they stop guys. They can't get the fans behind it. Look, Vince McMahon had an interest in buying the UFC. And he was going to buy, this is right when the Fox deal came out. Vince had come to the table with a number. And he wasn't going to go higher, and Fox went higher, and they got it. But Vince was just going to get it and shut it down. And he was even in an argument with his own son, Shane McMahon, who wanted to take it, and Shane wanted to run it. He was a big wrestling, or a big fight fan. This is the way that the story is told. I certainly wasn't, but I believe this story to be true. Everything seems in line. And Vince was a suitor for it, that I can confirm. But Vince's idea was buy it and shut it down. It's on pay-per-view. They're a direct competitor. Let's just get rid of this. Shane had a different idea of no, I want to run it. That was a little bit of a dispute, but Vince is very well known for coining the phrase that you cannot build a champion. You cannot build a star unless you can control the outcomes. He's famous for that. But he's starting and stopping guys nonstop. He's starting storylines and then he's stopping storylines. He has the ability through the power of the pin and the eraser on the other side to do whatever he wants. They can't get a good story. So Monday Night Raw the other night, I'm glad I watched. They had absolutely no show because it's rotten garbage over there, and they're hanging their hat on the idea of we don't have any talent, which is baffling to me. How you would not have talent when you don't even need it. It's not real. It's not an actual... What do you mean you don't have talent? You don't have guys that can do Hurricane Karanas and DDTs? What do you mean you don't have talent? Your problem is the storyline sucks. So for Monday Night Raw, here's what they did. Okay, look, we're calling it in. We're sailing it in. We have nothing to do. We're going to bring in every star in the history of wrestling, from Stone Cold to Ric Flair and everybody in between. And we're just going to let them make cameos all night long. Great. I bet the ratings did great. I tuned in just to see it. I wanted to hear the glass break. I want to see Stone Cold walk out, see what happened next. See the whole thing. See if Jake the Snake shows up. See if the Honky Tonk Man's there. I don't know what's going to go on. I love the idea. I got it. But that's sailing it into the highest of levels, and it is a little bit confusing to me. And it is a little bit confusing to me that the chairman, Vince McMahon, is letting the writers tell him, well, we don't have any talent. You don't have any talent? It's not real. You want to go out there and put on matches that don't look like a fight. They do not look competitive. They look as though the guys are cooperating with each other. Because guess what? The guys are cooperating. We understand that. But that does not go in line with the promos and the interviews and the t-shirts and the signs and the 80% of the show that you spend trying to get us to buy into this is the good guy versus this is the bad guy. Into buying in that these two who are buddies behind the scene have actual heat. That's the entire business. So if you've let down the fourth curtain, as I'm well aware they have since 1989, I get it. I know the whole story. I know about the trial. I know about Vince being sworn in under oath. I know the entire story. But so many people that like to be the smart marks to go, well, Chael, this isn't really competitive, and let's just see an athletic contest and see who's crazier and see who can climb up the highest rope and do the most flips before they crash through a table. That doesn't go hand in hand with then trying to do 80% of the show, I might add, storylines of building heat. Never in the history of wrestling, which has done a great business, by the way. Could you imagine anybody coming out and telling you, hey, by the way, this is all fake? And then evoking an emotion from the crowd anyway? Selling out an arena? Having somebody buy a t-shirt on the way out and having some people leave in tears because they didn't get the outcome that they wanted to, all while telling them this is make-believe? It's a fascinating business. But you can't have 80% of your product trying to build heat. They have never in the history of wrestling have two guys backstage who go, hey, we're buddies and we rode here together and we got a match tonight and let's go out and entertain the crowd. Okay, great. Your music, my music, let's shake hands. Everything's wonderful and we wrestle back and forth. It doesn't work that way. Nobody wants to see it. The entire business is built around heat. So if the matches are fake, obviously the heat is fake. So the entire skill there is to make us believe, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We're more than willing as fans to suspend reality. We have seen movies before. We have turned on television before. We're well aware that this is a performance. This isn't real. We get it. We're on board. But it's still then meant to look as though it's conflict with conflict resolution, which is said match. Somebody's dreams are going to be dashed and somebody is going to be propelled. You want to see the guy that you don't like be held back, and the guy that you're cheering for move up the ladder. That's what it is. That's what it used to be. There used to be actual discussions about actually intelligent people debating the topic back and forth. Is this real? But the only reason that worked wasn't because Vince McMahon went on trial in 1989 and some scumbag asked him the question just to be a jerk and ruin the whole thing while he's under oath. It wasn't just that. It was because the moves that they used looked real. That's what you'd actually do in a fight. You'd walk out and punch somebody in a fight. When you got tired of punching him, you kick him in the stomach. That looked real. And then after you do that a few times, you're going to grab a headlock and just hold it so you can catch a breather. That looked real. And maybe you'd slam him, maybe you do something in the ropes, or maybe you give him a close-up. That all looked real. Hitting a triple flip off the top rope while the guy lays staged for you does not look real. Hulk Hogan used to get teased. He didn't know the difference between a wrist lock and a wristwatch. I think Bobby Heenan or Gorilla Monsoon said that about Hulk Hogan. And it was true because he didn't go out there. He didn't wrestle. He didn't go out and do these large sequences back and forth. He came out there like a brute that was billed at 6'7" with 24-inch pythons from Venice Beach, California. He evoked an emotion from the crowd. He made you believe that he was the good guy. And whoever he was taking on must be some representative of evil. And he was going to overcome that. Wearing the cross and blessing himself and talking about your vitamins and your prayers and whatever the shtick was. And it didn't matter if he'd hit you with a right hand in the face and one boot to the chops before he covered you for the 1, 2, 3. He could sell out any arena in the world. And now people want to learn how to be really great wrestlers. What does that mean? To do a 4-spot sequence? To tell a story during the match? To drag it on and on? It either looks like something you would see in a real fight between two guys who are allegedly going out there to pin or submit each other, or it doesn't. And to say that you don't have any talent when 80% of it is talking and 20% of it is the match? What do I even call it? The match? That's a cop-out to the highest of levels. This is entertainment. Make your show. Make me believe it. The whole thing's based on evoking an emotion. Do it or don't. And right now, that rotten garbage for about the 4th year in a row is not. So there was a smaller story that had come out over the week, and I think that a lot of you guys might have missed it. And I, for one, am not willing to leave well enough alone. It's Nick Lentz versus BJ Penn. Now, the only reason that I find this interesting is I just happen to follow that story. Okay, let's back up, guys. Here, let's not. Let's start on third base. Here's what happened over the week. Nick Lentz took some kind of a shot at BJ Penn. BJ Penn responded. I think this whole thing was done through social media. BJ Penn responds and says, "I will see you soon." Nick Lentz says, "Well, I don't know about that. I don't spend a whole lot of time in Hawaii in the back of police cruisers, so there's really no reason that you should be seeing me soon." Okay, not for nothing. That's a really good line, right? I mean, that's a really good line. Now let's back up. Let's go to second base then first. Many years ago, those two had trained together, and BJ brought Nick in, brought him out to Hawaii. Now, BJ has a great reputation for bringing guys in and then treating them really good. BJ will bring guys in. They love the workouts. He makes sure they have a nice place to stay. They got money in their pocket for food. It's always a really great thing. And a lot of guys really wanted to be the training partners of BJ Penn. And I think that's where Nick fell. I think that's the same category Nick was in, but something happened in training and Nick's eye got split right off the bat. And he had to go home. He couldn't do anything. First, okay, I don't know if that was BJ that threw a punch and maybe Nick thought he hit him too hard. Maybe BJ wasn't even there and this was a training part. All I know is Nick was out there to train with BJ. Nick got his eye split early on and had to leave. I think as far as BJ was concerned, it was all cool in the gang and I'll catch you on the next one. Nick ended up saying, you know what? I have a better idea. Instead of me coming out there and training with you, let's just fight. Now, I was into that story, but at that time, BJ was in a place where I was like, come on, man. Are you serious? That's never going to happen. In addition, you were my training partner. Come on. What are you doing? And even I, as a fan, even kind of felt that same way. There's really nothing to see here. But over the years, right, BJ's not in the same spot he was in. Lentz doing just fine. I mean, right? You see what I'm saying? All of a sudden, it starts to make a little bit more sense. And now they have this heat back and forth. Now, all of a sudden, BJ Penn is saying, see you soon. Now, generally, you're going to take Nick Lentz, who the company is not in a big hurry to put some promotional push behind, against BJ Penn, who the company is clearly not in any interest promoting right now. Evident of the fact they've both been on the other cards lately. You think you marry two undercard fighters together, you're going to have an undercard fight. And maybe you would. But I don't know. There is something to be said for a grudge match. There is a story here. If people catch on to it, it's captivated me. I'm interested in it. And I think you also have something with this is going to be BJ's last fight. And that has been dangled out there many times. And I think if he is given another fight, if he has one more fight, the only way that he is going to talk Dana into that is to level with him and go, look, last one, and this time I mean it. I really am out of here, but let me do a send-off. Let me just tell people this will be my last one. Lentz is a suitable opponent. Everybody might agree and sign off. I would like to see that fight. And Lentz has even been on this show. He's been on he came on and dropped some poems. I had him on. He was going to be a guest. Go back and forth with him. I remember saying, hey, Nick, what's going on? He just started it on some poem and dropped the mic and hung up on me. But it was a solid poem. It provided for some solid entertainment for the 2 minutes that it lasted. So he gets a hold of me and says, hey, I was doing a little theater there and it worked pretty good, but let me come back on and we'll do the actual spot. Okay, great. You got it, Nick. So he comes back. Hey, Nick, how's it going? And he drops another poem. He double crosses me, drops the mic, and hangs up again. But it was good, solid theater. So that's a little bit of my history. Maybe I'm tied to it a little bit more. And so I knew the backstory there. But it looks like, look, if BJ's willing to, can I say take the bait? I think that's fair. Is it take the bait? I mean, this is what Lentz wanted for about 6 or 7 years. If Lentz is finally going to get it, I think that's a fair term to say BJ's taking the bait, but I think that that's a match that I would like to see, and I think that we would need the added storyline that it is BJ's farewell. I don't want to tell a guy when to get out of the sport, but it does appear that he's going to be leaving the sport, and a little bit reluctantly, and doesn't want to, and I think that it would help him, and even incentivize him, motivate, to come out, say it ahead of time, make that walk and go have a fight, particularly one that he thinks he can win. Let's see. Maybe we're going to have BJ Penn and Nick Lentz. Maybe I'll get those guys on the show. They can tell their side of the story. But until we have them, that's a little nugget that I think went under the radar and perhaps shouldn't. I think that there could be a little bit of a spark there that's going to turn into a flame. Guys, I'm looking at the time and I've realized I've had it with you all. But I'll be back on Friday. Until then, I'm Chael. Thanks for listening, everybody. And you are welcome.